little bit about myself. A little bit about myself. I am an award-winning mental health writer, speaker, content creator, blogger, who is an outspoken, passionate mental health activist on various social justice issues, especially on the intersectionality of mental health awareness. Accompanied with my own lived experiences, I like to raise awareness of perspectives of Black and other ethnic minority communities in Ireland. I'm also currently a student in TUD Dublin, studying youth and community development, and I am also a youth support worker. I have been featured in The Selfie Show with Lust for Life, The New York Times, and Image magazine. Being involved with numerous organizations such as Spun Out and Sea Change, I can be found participating in various projects, podcasts, and writing to spread awareness through empathy and education. I'm delighted to welcome you all here on this lovely sunny afternoon. The National Women's Council Disabled Women's Group is participating in the Dublin Arts and Human Rights Festival. The theme of this year's festival is Hope, Voices of Hope, Courage and Resilience. The story continues. The festival runs until the 24th of October this Sunday. Today, we will bring together artists, activists, disabled women, and all those interested in using the arts to celebrate and promote human rights and equality for all. We have an incredible lineup of artists who will share their art practices with us. We are really looking forward to discussion with our panelists and sharing our creative advocacy piece too, which we will also visually represent individuals in the group and represent a shared collective experience. Before we get started, I'm just going to share a few housekeeping things in place. You have the opportunity to ask questions using the chat function on your screen, or please raise your hands using the function or unmute yourself. The chat function on your screen, we will also invite you to share your thoughts on social media using the hashtag capital letters Disabled Women's Voices and hashtag capital letters DAH4F. We will also take a short comfort break later on today around 4 p.m. and hope to take a group picture of everyone here too. There is also a closed captioning and you may need to turn it on if needed. Also, with a few other housekeeping, we will be recording the event and welcome all contributions. However, please feel free to share your reflections in the chat only if you prefer not to be recorded on video. Please join us in a quiet location and enjoy the rest of this event. Now, Now I'm going to share the reason why I joined the Disabled Women's Group and why it's important to me. The reason why I joined this group is because experiencing barriers and pain in an ableist world is something that no one should ever have to go through alone. Inclusion and community goes such a long way for mental health, and this is the reason why I joined, and I'm just very grateful to be here. Now, I would like to introduce Orla O'Connor and Evie Nevin as joint organizers to make some opening comments.
Thank you, Blessing. And good afternoon, everyone. And my visual description is I'm white, I wear glasses, I've sort of reddish, brownish hair. So I'm really, really delighted that the National Women's Council is jointly hosting this event with the Disabled Women's Group as part of the Dublin Rights our Arts and Human Rights Festival. And as Blessing, has already said, the festival it's a collaborative partnership. It's showcasing world-class programming and presenting new and diverse artists and acts. And there really is something for everyone to participate and enjoy in. We're part of this collaborative partnership with Smashing Times and Frontline Defenders, and also in partnership with Amnesty International, Fighting Words, the Irish Council for Civil Liberties, Trócaire and Poetry Ireland. And this year's event, the 2021 event, really aims to showcase and to highlight the extraordinary work of human rights defenders in Ireland and around the world, both past and present, and also the role of the arts and artists in promoting human rights today. As Blessing has said, the theme this year is hope, courage, resilience, the story continues. And the idea really is that the festival will bear witness and remember the past, explore the present, and celebrate the future linked to equality and rights for all. And it really will be highlighting the role that artists can play in a new society. So I would really encourage people to check out the remaining online and in-person events and come and enjoy them. So through this event today, we really wanted to highlight the strength in disabled women working together to fight for equality and justice, and to use the medium of the arts to campaign for change. This event is about providing a space to showcase the work of disabled women artists through poetry, music, and readings. Disabled women are organising and working together through disabled people's organisations, such as Disabled Women Ireland, and also informally in their own collectives. A disabled people's organisation is an independent membership organisation which is run for and by disabled people. And this work needs to be meaningfully resourced and practically supported, so that we can show how serious we are about increasing disabled women's participation at all levels of society. For those of you who may not know the National Women's Council, we're the leading national representative organisation for women and women's groups in Ireland. We're a feminist organisation and there's over 190 member groups. And our ambition in the National Women's Council is an Ireland where every woman enjoys true equality and no woman is left behind. And this ambition shapes and informs our work and also our values and how we approach our work. Disabled women have often been invisible in discourse on disability and gender. And it's sometimes assumed that policies and practice are gender neutral. And there's a lack of understanding of the ways in which gender and disability issues interact. In practice, gender inequalities in the structures of our society combine with the disadvantages experienced by people with disabilities to create forms of exclusion and discrimination for disabled women. Disabled women encounter and experience a wide range of barriers to full equality, including things like accessing the labour market, access to health services, including screening, reproductive services, and also disabled women are underrepresented across all areas of public and political life. Since February 2020, in the National Women's Council, we've been working collectively with a group of disabled women. And the purpose of the work is to work with is to enable the National Women's Council to ensure disabled women are more effectively represented across all of our work in the National Women's Council. So through this working together, we're strengthening our advocacy and campaigning work and championing spaces where disabled women take the lead and organisations that are led by disabled people. Creating and supporting this space has been a really important and valuable part of our work over the past 18 months. Women's experiences and voices have always been at the centre of our mobilisation and movement building work in the Women's Council. And we will continue to make visible the issues and experiences of disabled women across the Women's Council and also in our wider policy and campaigns. In doing so, it's really of particular importance to the Women's Council that this work is led by disabled women and that their voices and their participation are championed and supported. Because we know we need a cultural shift in how society views disabled women so that their rights are fully realised. We must ensure that the needs, priorities and voices of disabled women are actively considered and supported at all levels in our society. We really continue to look forward to working with all of our disabled women members and our members such as the Irish Deaf Women of Ireland, the Independent Living Movement Ireland, and developing the work of the Disabled Women's Group within our organisation. And just finally to say, as we have to do with all of all of our events and all of our work, and we would really encourage you to join with the National Women's Council in our campaigns for our work, and also to support our work financially. And you can go to our website in terms of providing a donation. The link for the donations are on our Twitter page. So I'm really, really delighted to be here at this event. The fact that this event is happening, I think it's a really exciting event. And I'm really delighted to introduce you to a co-organizer, Evie Nevin, who is a member of the National Executive and chairs the Diversity Committee of the Social Democrats. Evie is a member of the National Council Disabled Group. She lives in Cork. And in addition to all of her political work, Evie also sits on other boards and committees helping to improve the lives of people with disabilities in Ireland. So over to you, Evie.
Thank you, Orla. That saved me doing out my own bio. Thanks very much. So just to give a brief description of what I look like, I am wearing a red top. I'm a white Irish woman. I have red hair that clearly needs to be topped up, but the roots are shown. And thrilled to be here. So thanks very much. I want to welcome you all here today on behalf of the National Women's Council Disabled Women's Group. And through our participation on the Disabled Women's Group, we come together to share information and ideas and inform the National Women's Council's strategic work and contribute to a human rights narrative of disabled women and marginalised genders, paying attention to intersectional issues. The group is about supporting and creating spaces for the direct voices, activism and participation of disabled women, clearly articulating our social, economic, cultural and political rights. It is so important that disabled women are equally active, heard and influential in all women's spaces, shaping the women's equality movement in Ireland. All too often, disabled people's voices go unheard in conversation about our rights, needs and our lives. And this is particularly true for disabled women and other gender minorities. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, which Ireland ratified in 2018, was important in many ways. It gave attention and it drew to the specific experiences of disabled women and girls and the obligation it placed on any country which signed up to it to prioritise disabled persons' organisations in all policies which affect disabled people's lives. Disabled persons organisations, or DPOs, are representative organisations and are formed by disabled people to advocate for our rights, where disabled people make up more than half of the staff and members at all decision-making levels of the organisation. By combining our voices, spoken and unspoken, into DPOs, disabled people find strength and solidarity in the ongoing fight for full equality. Disabled women are much more likely to live in consistent poverty, to be denied education and employment, to be institutionalised against their will, to face reproductive coercion, and to experience sexual and gender-based violence. Disabled women and other gender minorities experience and navigate the world in unique ways, encountering intersecting barriers created by ableism and sexism, along with those facing any other identities they carry. And yet, those voices are the least likely to be heard at the decision-making table.
Input and output are the same. There.
Sorry. I would encourage all disabled women to get involved where decisions are being made that affect our lives. The women's movement must reflect on how it works to create inclusive and effective spaces for all women on an equal basis.
I don't know, it's just, it's hard to even understand, you know.
Could we put people on mute, please? Sorry. The women's movement must reflect on how it works to create inclusive and effective spaces for all women on an equal basis. One of the themes of the festival is resilience. The story continues. It is important that we can tell our stories and use the power of the arts and creative processes to bring about change in disabled women's lives and in broader society. I am very excited to listen to all the speakers here today, and I want to thank you all for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Orla and Evie, for being here. Everything that you said was just so beautiful and just so spot on. Just a reminder for housekeeping that while we are on Zoom, that we are going to keep our microphones off just throughout the event. Now I am delighted now to introduce Penny Pepper. Penny Pepper is an acclaimed wheelchair-using author, poet, performer, and disabled activist. A genre-defying and versatile writer, her work focuses on the examination of difference, inequality, and identity. Penny joined us back in May at our International Solidarity Gathering event with disabled women, and will now perform the completed piece that she has developed for us back in May. Due to last-minute health appointment, Penny could not join us today and has prepared a recording for us.
Hello everyone, I'm honoured to be present for your day, your marvellous event. I'm really sad that it has to be in this fashion, but I do hope you enjoy my spoken word piece, which is now called Together, Disabled Women. We voice, we sign, we speak, we write, and always we sing. We gather in collaboration from divergent places. Together, disabled women, locally and globally, find the spirit of sisterhood. All your flowering feminist hearts on the life mission, pride and open learning. Injustice brews storm clouds over solidarity. Our absence feeds miscarriages of justice. Poverty scrapes our energy, and on repeat they herd us to invisibility. Yet we are local and we are global. 500 million women, bound by 500 million experiences of shared understanding. We voice, we sign, we speak, we write, and always we sing. We gather in collaboration from divergent places. Defiance is a name we carry in communication. Each sister takes her path against double discrimination. Our problems melt with passion and innovation. This alliance fuels our souls to keep defiant to injustice and its rusty, crusty, tired face that sneers behind each fast arrest on rough streets, high court battles for independent living, to live as we wish, proactive and thriving. Because we are pride and learning and lead by the blood in our hearts as warrior women. We are society, a hive of problems solved, innovating, advocating, barrier breaking. We voice, we sign, we speak, we write, and always we sing. We gather in collaboration from divergent places. We wear down low as we strive to win the patriarchal race, but then we fight softly in our velvets, cottons, batiks, cheap chip nylons. Time passing, different women, different countries, Ireland, Malawi, Argentina, England, Finland, Serbia, France, flowing far and flowing beyond what they call divisions. each to our own in different ways, and how we can campaign for this sisterhood of common lives lived. Let's not be the afterthought, the forgotten and misplaced. Acknowledge and address that many can't eat, bills stay unpaid, and invisibility is the shadow beast, so wake-up calls stay overdue. But we voice, we sign, we speak, we write, and always we sing. We gather in collaboration from divergent places. We might cry and wonder when to stop, rights eroded across the globe by the new plague. Men make more barriers crammed onto the historic, reproductive rights and bodies under siege. We seek to find, we seek to form the communities run by us, for us. From our virtual couch, we know the replies. We find our voice, we find our power. We lift up others who think they're alone. We voice, we sign, we speak, we write, and always we sing. We gather in collaboration from divergent places. And we work in sisterhood, equality, solidarity. Disabled women join, we all learn as one. We will one day all flourish, because we are women, the 500 million. Our direct action is a force of multiple natures, of highs and diversions, as we shake with the blood of the goddess in her multiple forms and faces. Control, redeemed, enlightened, love, to be who we might be, who we are, and who are our free daughters to become. We gather in collaboration from divergent places. We voice, we sign, we speak, we write, and always we sing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Penny. And that was just such a beautiful yet deep meaning piece of poetry. And we are delighted to be able to share a YouTube piece of her monologue, Letter to Paul, performed by Liz Carr, and we will be able to email it to everyone who has registered for this event. Looking forward to it. Now, I would like to welcome Grania Blair, who will present the creative advocacy piece developed by NWC Disabled Women's Group. Grania?
Céad míle fáilte, disabled Mná. And on behalf of our planning committee, on behalf of my planning committee, colleagues Selena Bonney, Aoife Price, Gladys O'Neill and Catherine Lane, we welcome everyone and thank you for joining with us, live or recorded, as we, the National Women's Council Disabled Women's Group, continue to work together as a coalition of groups and individuals representing ourselves in all aspects of our lived lives. By combining such powerful sessions as today, we are showcasing our compelling and varied creative expressions that show us as so much more than a medical, social and economic construct. In keeping with the themes for this year's Dublin Arts and Human Rights Festival, Hope, Courage and Resilience, the general consensus from our wider group clearly indicated that hope and courage far too often are aspects we as disabled women are told to strive for, thereby negating our lived realities as people and citizens. This next combination of photographic expressions represents aspects of our resilience daily. Paraphrasing the famous song, I Say a Little Prayer for You, I've taken some liberties. Quote, "The moment I wake up, before I put on my makeup, I take 17 medications because science enables me to start my day. While combing my hair now and wondering what clothes to wear now, or I may not start my day until the clock on the wall tells me that my assistant is here to support me starting my day." Everyone in the world uses some type of support. Just because we may seem to use more does not mean we are less. Don't speak for us. Ask us what we want and need to live individual, independent lives. Then support us when we ask you to join with us and others as we continue as ordinary women, teachers, athletes, writers, actors, artists, creatives, adventurers, activists, politicians. We need more Olympians to fight for changes within our society at all levels. After all, we are the experts. I will leave you now with this quote. "I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it." Mea Angelou. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you so much, Grania, for that piece. Now I am delighted to introduce Rosaleen McDonough. Rosaleen is a traveller, playwright, academic, feminist, member of Asundana, disability activist. She is a regular contributor to the Irish Times and has written extensively within the framework of a traveller feminist perspective. Her work includes Mainstream, The Baby Doll Project, Stuck, She's Not Mine, and Rings. She has recently published Unsettled, a collection of essays and a new play, Walls and Windows, that has premiered on the Abbey stage. Thank you, Rosaleen, and we look forward to you taking part in our discussion panel later on.
Thanks, Blessing. Firstly, I want to apologize to my deaf sisters and then to the interpreters. I'm developing a poem and it's not quite where I want it to be. I'm hoping it will be there by next March for Women's Day. So that's why I didn't want to share it. And I've dyed brown hair in a bob, pink glasses. My impairment is CP, and the reason you need to know that is I talk slowly, which is good for you, but not good for everyone else. So I get on with it, and I may not finish it all. Okay, so my piece, I wanted to look at the 5 waves of feminism and where we as deaf and disabled women lie within that. And when we got our emancipation, no, again, please bear in mind, it's a work in progress. First wave, white feminism, swimming frankly towards the silver wave. Women like me, the vote, our sanity can't be trusted. The tide failed to rise me. It almost drowned me. Capacity undermined. State violence, care violence, intimate violence, gender-based violence. This S-shaped body, this Y-shaped body, my queerness, my gayness, my heteroflexibility, my reproductive compromise, my expression, my sexuality, my race, my ethnicity, the speed, the algorithm, universalities, no particularities, only peculiarities, women like us. Keep them illiterate, keep them ignorant, keep them objects, never subjects, coercive control, forced sterilization, tie in your tubes, consent put on hold, segregation, positioned between infant care, elder care, the burden, the exploitation, the blame is on half-made women like me. Duty human, redefining femininity, intersectionality, diversity, lowering the ramp, inching closer, visibility, productivity, creativity. Bodily autonomy, bodily integrity, independence, freedom. Me too, my voice, my reality, my sign, my choice, my testimony, my pride, my deaf sisters, my disabled sisters, my symbiotic interdependence, my fluidity, my feminism. That's it.
Thank you so much, Rosaline, and thank you so much for being here. One thing that I noticed was, you apologized in the beginning, and I just wanted to say that don't apologize for being you. Thank you so much for being here, and your piece of work, and just even your reading your bio. There's just so many talented people here, and it's just wow, it's just amazing. So next up, we are going to show a video from the Disabled Women's Group, and we're going to show them with images and text.
What do I need to be me today? A showcase of curated images and text from the National Women's Council Disabled Women's Group. As part of the 2021 Dublin Arts and Human Rights Festival, Voices of Hope, Courage and Resilience, the story continues, we ask, what do I need to be me today? Aoife Price. I always try and get some fresh air in the morning, and it sets me up for the day ahead. I'm very lucky to live in a location with beautiful scenery all around me, This image is from my walk this morning, a river walk behind where I live that leads into a woods. Marion Maloney. This is my guide dog Leon. He has guided me in my daily routine and enabled me to run in the Galway County Council local elections in 2019. I felt that in order to make a real impact and instigate change, I would need to be at the table where all the big decisions are made. Living with a visual impairment all my life, I have first-hand experience of exclusion and the barriers which exist on a daily basis. As a mother and grandmother, I have always strived to live an independent and active life. I would urge the visually impaired community to think about a guide dog and the freedom that comes with that. Lorraine Lally. You walk around on the street without a care in the world. Then everything changes for you. Then the walking is a task you can't do alone. Your legs are there, but not working there. Reality is altered forever. Stick the sympathy and helping hand. I want my legs to work again. Gladys O'Neill. My first battle in the day is with myself. It can be exhausting just to get myself sorted, but I push myself on because I've not lost my desire to take part in society, despite the many barriers we as disabled women face. Having a sense of humour, I have found, literally, is my best medicine. Blessing Dada. What a morning with fibromyalgia is like. 7 a.m. is the first part of my day. My first med alarm goes off, and I force myself to sit up and take my meds. It has been at least 7 hours since I last took medication, and definitely 12 since I took my strongest tablets. Being in bed too long can make the day much, much worse. I make myself have a quick shower and some breakfast. Because I live alone, my walking cane gives me so much. Evie Nevin. Each morning I wake is unpredictable. Some days I wake up feeling brand new, but most days I wake up in pain. Each morning my body snaps, crackles and pops. It is the song of my people. Each morning I pop 1 pill, 2 pill, 3 pills, 4, 5 pills, 6 pills, 7 pills more. People are always shocked to see such a young woman taking that many meds. Others judge. Those who see the pain behind closed doors understand. And while these pills allow me to function for the most part, allow me to mother my children, allow me to enter a world of the able-bodied, the pain is always there, it's dulled but never gone. Maybe if I'd been diagnosed earlier, maybe if I'd been treated better, sooner, I wouldn't need all these pills. Maybe I wouldn't rattle if you shook me. But this is my reality and the reality of so many women with disabilities who have been left to rot, left to decondition, left to think it's all in your head. Jackie McBerty. This is Sasha. She's my third guide dog. Each morning when I wake, I get greeted with a wet nose and a wagging tail. This beautiful dog depends on me for feeding, grooming and playtime, but in return she gives me freedom. I hold the handle on her harness and I can see. I stop at curbs, I can find shop doors, I can get on public transport and I can engage with people. These 4 paws ensures I'll never be afraid to walk either in the dark or bright sunlight. All my dogs took the darkness away and made me proud of my sight loss. I no longer needed to hide the fact I was blind. I don't need to be in the shadows anymore. My dog and I are one. Siobhan Hardiman. This is my hand, the hand of a warrior, the hand of a warrior that doesn't go into battle every day, because every night is a battle too. The hand of someone who never gets a holiday for medical conditions. The hand of a woman who has battled with her body for decades. This is the hand of a disabled woman who fought tooth and nail to become a mother. The hand of a strong woman who will not be defeated. Grania Blair. Resilience. I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. Maya Angelou. This combination of photographic expressions represents aspects of my acquired disability that happened in 2010. 24/7 I live with ABI, acquired brain injury, and PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. My PTSD is located in the oldest part of the brain, the reptilian brain that only knows instantaneous fight, flight, freeze and flop. Hence the reptile intertwined with some of the items that I must start my day with in order to function at all. Don't speak for me, ask me what I need to live an independent life.
Thank you so much for that piece. It was almost emotional just watching it all, because it just goes to show that, you know, there's different people from all walks of background struggling with different aspects of disability, but through it all, we're here together today, gathered in resilience and in power. So thank you so much to all the contributors for that video. Next up, I would like to introduce Emily Conway. Emily is an award-winning vocal jazz artist. Her music is informed and complemented by her love of literature, poetry, sound, and silence. As an artist with a disability, Emily's broader work with people with disabilities show her dedication to making the world a more inclusive space. Through her art, her audio described tours and public speaking, she engages people with and without disabilities in ways that are inquiring, collaborative, creative, and transformative. The pressures and inequities intensified by the pandemic has been seen. Emily finds a new song as she finds her voice as an artist, campaigning disability rights with the founding of DADA, DADA, which also happens to be my last name too. DADA brings together disabled artists and disabled academics to use their strengths in a campaign for cultural and human rights in line with the UNCRPD. Emily, can you introduce the piece we are going to play and share with everyone? Okay. Thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to your participation on the panel later on this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Blessing. Yeah, I noticed that you have the same, that you have your data in your name. That's brilliant. Thank you for that introduction, and delighted to be here. This is a very empowering. We talk about resilience. I think being with all of you today is building resilience for all of us. Thank you for the intro, Blessing. I suppose, yeah, you know, about 5 years ago, I was sort of a undercover disabled person, and I was sort of minimizing, I suppose, my challenges for fear of that losing me opportunities. But as I say, I noticed the lack of diversity in the arts and in audiences. And I guess initially I thought it was a question, I felt it was me for a question of creativity that I could answer in my practice. So yes, that led me to establish things like with the RHA, bringing in other people who are visually impaired or blind, and to work collaboratively with sighted artists. And that was a project that was funded by the Create. And I guess what I was doing with that was my point in it was that visually impaired people would bring something interesting in terms of how we work with material and textures that will be different to what a sighted artist, and that the meeting point of those two processes will be creatively interesting to explore. And Then also, yes, I create audio described tours, which are also sensory, because I feel audio description by itself is not quite enough. And yeah, so those are, but as I say, in the last year, well, with the pandemic, I think it's compressed everybody's issue and the problems with exclusion. And I guess I decided that, you know, art practice alone wasn't enough to deal with the systemic barriers that preclude disabled people from contributing and participating in the arts. And a lot of that is around that simple, once you do anything to help yourself, you lose supports, which just is wrong. And, you know, I think that when people do anything over or earn anything over 140 a week, that they start to lose supports, that becomes unsustainable for disabled artists, and also becomes unsustainable for disabled audiences, because art costs money. So the video that we'll see in a minute or two is one of my projects. It's one of the sort of art-based practices where I've been invited to talk about my disability in schools and my experience of that. And I decided to turn it, rather than talk to children, to turn it into a song, which led to a collaboration with children who wanted to perform the song with me. And you'll see all their beautiful art. And I guess the point of the song is that things work out, but they work out through kindness, which I believe is really a discipline, and creativity, which we could do a lot more of in our policies. We could also do with a lot more kindness in them as well. So before we come to that, I did write something, just a short piece, because I did think that a lot of us as activists, we don't really choose to be activists. We want to get on with our lives, but there are these barriers that we need to transform before we can do that, which turns us into activists. So I began to think, yes, what is resilience? So this is just a short piece. What is resilience? When out of silence and acquiescence a voice tells the truth and brings disharmony, division, distance, the voice, unsettled, does not falter and sings. Fly once, sing once, into the face of compliance, and never agree again. The emperor has no clothes, naked as the day he was born. And other voices gather, warm and resonant in chorus, singing a siren song that tells the truth. What is resilience? It's in the singing. There we are, and maybe we can go into the video now. Thank you. Perhaps while that's teeing up, oh, here we go.
All works out, you see, it all works out. It all works out, you see, with kindness and little creativity.
When I was in school, a lot like you, I didn't quite fit in. I couldn't play sports or see the board, but how I love to sing. It all works out, you see, it all works out. It all works out, you see, the unexpected so surprisingly. I love to read and write and paint, and people often said to me, "You go so close, how can you see?" It was a mystery, them and me. Oh, but it all works out, you see, it all works out. It all works out, you see, the unexpected so surprisingly. Well, music's taken me all around the world. I meet kind friends along the way. Some fit in and some stand out. Either way, it's all okay, 'cause you know it all works out. people think that's not always the easy part. But if you do it all works out, you see, it all works out. It all works out, you see.
The unexpected so surprisingly.
All works out, you see. It all works out.
It all works out, you see. With kindness and a little creativity.
It all works out, you see. It all works out. It all works out, you see. With kindness and a little creativity. Even if you have a disability.
Your disability is not your identity. We're up and down, turns the world topsy-turvy.
It takes kindness and a little creativity. It all works It all works out.
It all works out. It all works out.
Wow, that was amazing. I got a bit emotional there because I love music. Like when nightclubs come back on next week, hopefully that's going to be like the first request in Academy You Up.
Love
Thank
that.
you so much for that.
Thank you.
Next up, I would like to introduce Mary Collins. Mary is a writer, painter, and campaigner for independent living. When she was young, she was inspired by many people with disabilities who have expressed their emotions through writing, including Christopher Nolan and Davarin Hanna. Currently, her life story book is nearly finished for publication, and she also hopes to bring out another poetry collection expressing her feelings about our world today in our poems. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you. I am a white woman with grey hair and glasses. And I'm a wheelchair user. And poetry has been my freedom since the lockdown. And 30 years I've been writing poetry. So anyway, this poem is called The Universal Dream. Disability rights came from civil rights. In California, when people with disabilities saw the fight for Black people's freedom, if you wanted to go to college, to see their thirst for knowledge, they succeeded in their goal, and each soul, the fire was lit. The ultimate prize of human rights to live and work like anybody else. And thus the independent living movement was born. In 1992, freedom came to me and you when Ireland recognized the USA dream. There are over 1 billion people with disabilities on the planet, but we are not all equal. Very few have the freedom I speak up above. If they are lucky, they might find hope through sport, and government might give them enough support to represent the nation in the Paralympic Games. In some cultures, however, in some cultures, however, the result is even worse because it is believed that the disability is the result of a curse. It is my hope that this dream of freedom may be realized in every country in this world, no matter how challenging this may seem. And I apologize for the slow reading.
No, don't apologize at all. The one thing I took from your poetry is, I think the last line was, I hope it's a dream that disability becomes a human right. I can't remember, but the last line stood out to me, and it's just so powerful. So thank you so much for sharing your poem with us. Now I would like to introduce Isolda Carmody, a writer, performer, and activist who moved to County Leitrim from Dublin in 1999, who has worked extensively from around the Northwest and beyond in community theatre and collaborative arts. Her practice is informed by theatre of the oppressed and aesthetic accessibility, drawn on the legacy of the Focus Theatre in Ireland. We will be sharing a song from Isolda, and she will also share 2 poems with us. Welcome, and thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Blessing, and thank you very much as well to the interpreters. I'm always interested in the interpreter's role for poetry and song. I think it's something we need to have more of throughout the arts sector. When I was thinking about the pieces that I'm going to share and how they relate to the theme of the Dublin Arts and Human Rights Festival, I think they speak to The Story Continues, but they also speak to the shameful fact that it is still radical for a disabled woman to express her sexuality. I've just realized I haven't described my appearance. I apologize. I am a white woman with long, recently dyed, very red hair. I mean, like pillar box red. And I have nose piercings and a piercing in my lower lip as well. Those are the ones you can see. So without further ado, I will introduce my first poem. It's called Embrace, and I wrote it when I was 15 years old and madly in love with my best friend, which I'm sure is an experience many people have shared. Nothing ever came of it, but she is still my best friend. But I wrote this poem for her, and it's called Embrace. As you slide your hand under my shirt sleeve and up my arm, a layer of skin is also taken up. Inside my arm, your hand glides smoothly past a pokey elbow, flitting over inadequate triceps, over a gawkish shoulder, down my collarbone, over my breast, and clutches gently you understand, at my heart. Simultaneously, your other hand penetrates my other arm, takes the same route, but at the fork takes a left, avoiding the thoracic cavity, steals past my jugular and wends its way around the back of my neck and into my head, your palm encompassing my whole skull and everything inside. You rest your head on my shoulder and sleep there. So when I was thinking about this event, it occurred to me that I needed to respond to that poem. Both myself and the friend for whom I wrote it have had something of a barrage of diagnoses, health and disabilities over the last number of years. And so I wanted to revisit the feeling of that poem, but give credit to where our bodies are at now, nearly 30 years later. And it's called Misfitting. You cradle my skull in cupped hands and sip the liquor, distilled from neurotransmitters, sublimated via misfiring neurons, releasing heady notes of brain fog and fatigue. You look right through my eyes, the double slit of scars, permitting uncertain passage of photons, though both routes carry your gaze directly to my spinal cord. This now twisted trunk of tumbled Jenga vertebrae can guarantee no path free of roadworks and diversions. Correlations rewired, such that any touch could evoke any sensation. My head at rest in the scoop of your clavicle aches each of us heavily. Yet we hold still, enduring the cricks for the sake of closeness. That need to climb inside each other's skin, to experience ourselves from the outside and each other from the inside. Our pains and pleasures locked together in this innerness, expansive enough to hold our bones together, until we carefully rearrange each of our parts, disentangling, disambiguating, filtering me out of you. Though I like to think this tiny bone, the tip of this finger, once lived in your hand. So to finish off, I would like to hand over to my alter ego, Ms. Honeysuckle Rose. And here's one I made earlier. It's a reimagining of a classic song, which I performed for the very first Leitrim LGBT Pride this August. And I would also like to say, roll it there, Roisin.
Here
Here's a little song about being single in your 40s, in rural Leitrim, and being disabled, and gay, and vegan. Does that count? No one to talk with, all by myself. No one to walk with, but I am happy on a shelf. A misbehaving, saving all my love for. I know for certain just what I'd love. I'm shit at flirting, so what am I thinking of? A misbehaving, I'm saving all my love for who? Like Jack Horner in a corner, don't go nowhere. What do I care? Your kisses, they're worth waiting for. I'm sure I don't stay out late, don't get the chance. I'm home about 8 alone in my underpants. Ain't misbehaving, still saving all my loving for anyone? Okay, so I've been in a bit of a dry patch, and not only as a perimenopausal symptom. Maybe it has something to do with being a blind, crippled lesbian in rural Ireland. And it doesn't help being in my 40s. I mean, I think there was definitely something wrong with me. I think it has more to do with taste. Quite fundamental to a lesbian. I mean, my taste for straight women and certifiable sociopaths. But I'm an incurable optimist. So maybe next time. I'm fairly certain I'm quite the catch. I'm shite at flirting 'cause I'm terrible at eye contact. Ain't misbehaving, just saving all my loving for you. Or you? Oh, no, not you. Like Jack Horner in the corner, can't get in there in my wheelchair. My kisses, they're worth waiting for. Believe me, I don't like nightclubs, those sticky floors. Prefer my bathtub, my tea and my menopause. Ain't misbehaving, just saving all my love for you. Ooh, maybe. Ain't misbehaving, just saving all my loving for me. Oh, maybe just me. Again.
Thank you so much for that, Isolda. Wow, like my list for nightclubs reopening is just building up. You know, the only thing I won't be doing is also making eye contact as well. But thank you, thank you so much. I really enjoyed that. So now we're gonna take a little break for about 10 minutes, and afterwards we're gonna have a really interesting panel discussion. So if you're comfortable, we're going to try and get a small group photo. If you're not comfortable, you can turn off your cameras. And if you're comfortable, you can turn them on because I want to see some beautiful faces. But in the meantime, enjoy your Barry's tea or Lions, and we'll see you back in 10 minutes. I am a fan. Sorry, I still love people who love Lion's Tea. So to get started back, we are delighted to welcome back everyone, and I am delighted to hand over to our fantastic panel chair, Roisin Ní Hackett. Roisin is a final year sociology and social policy student, struggling musician, and a devoted believer in disability justice and liberation. Welcome, Roisin, and thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Brilliant. So yeah, my name's Roisin. I'm a musician, student, a bit of a loudmouth and a disabled woman. To visually describe myself, I have white skin, I have light brown hair in a bun, and I'm wearing a black polo neck and a green shirt. I'm going to be chairing the panel today for the next half an hour, and you have to take it easy on me because it's the first panel I've chaired before. But I'm wearing shoulder pads. I'm in girl boss mode. So let's start. So I'm delighted and honoured to be joined by Emily Conway, Lydia Gratis, Rosaleen McDonough, Isolde O'Brolachan, Carmen D. Between them, these women have an amazing record of achievements and talent. I'm really looking forward to the discussion with our panelists, and thank you all for joining. So I think this panel would be a really good opportunity to discuss access to the arts, which something that really came up this year due to COVID and the digitization. Obviously there's so many artists on this panel. It would be a shame not to talk about it. But also I'd love this conversation to be really conversational and flexible. So don't worry about sticking to any particular topics, or if we go off in tangents, that is completely fine, and often more constructive than sticking to any specific topics. Yeah, and for the audience, please feel free to chime in at any point, to ask questions using the chat function on your screen, raise your hand using the Zoom function, or unmute yourself. Yeah. So I'll quickly reintroduce our guest panelists before we start the conversation. Pretty sure everyone's been introduced apart from Lydia, so I'll give you a proper one and then I'll speed through the rest of them. So yes, and Lydia, if you could give a visual description of yourself as well after I introduce you, that would be fantastic. So Lydia is a writer and an activist who's born in South Africa and raised in Ireland, and she's the first Black deaf person in the Irish deaf community. Her experiences navigating a deaf white world and a Black hearing world shapes a lot of her upbringing and her present work. She works as a social inclusion and communications officer for Ireland's leading national sign language interpreting service provider. She's a board member for the Irish Deaf Society, focusing on diversity and inclusion. She's on the All Ireland Women's Forum and a nominee for the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission's Disability Advisory Board. So I invite you to give a visual description of yourself. Okay.
So I'm a Black woman and I'm wearing a black head wrap, and I have white glasses on, and yeah, I have a silver top with I'm on a blue background. So that's me.
Perfect, thank you. So next up is Isolde O'Brolachan Carmody, is a writer, performer, activist from County Leitrim who lives in Dublin. Thank you so much for your alter ego there at the end. I'm still laughing about it. Then Dr. Rosaleen McDonough is a traveller woman with a disability. She works in Pavy Point, the Roma Centre. Her play Walls and Windows was on the Abbey Theatre in August 2021, and also her collection of essays, Unsettled, was just published by Skein Press. So well done for that, and also well done for your performance earlier on. Then finally, Emily Conway is an award-winning local jazz artist. She co-founded DADA, the Disabled Artists and Disabled Academics Group, which seeks to promote gender equity in line with the CRPD. So I think that's my introductions out of the way, and I'll just go straight in with the first question. So Isolde, in your bio earlier on, it mentioned the Theatre of the Oppressed, which I'd actually never heard of before I read your bio the other day. So I was wondering if you could just introduce that topic, and then maybe we could use that to open up the question to the whole panel regarding the pros and cons of using art for activism.
Well, thank you, Roisin. I think if you're doing this event with Smashing Times, they could probably tell you more in detail about Theatre of the Oppressed. It was a movement and an approach created by Augusto Boal, which is about using, I suppose, authentic experiences to tell stories that will change societal structures. I think that's probably the most concise way that I can describe it. It does a lot of work with community arts and collaborative arts, and involves non-actors with actors and theatre practitioners. And it's very often about creating a play, a performance that is really specific to the time, the place, and the people who are performing and experiencing the theatre. So it's given rise to other kind of subsets, including legislative theatre, which is specifically using theatre to change laws. And one really shining example of this in Ireland is the film Sanctuary, which was made when it was still illegal for adults with learning disabilities to have consensual sex with each other. The film was made with and by actors and writers with intellectual disabilities, and it did materially affect the change in the law that then actually recognised that regardless of your form of impairment, you have a right to a sexuality and to a private life, and you have the power to give consent in that context. So that's really, I suppose, where I think Theatre of the Oppressed has a real role to play in activism, in, I suppose, arts on the edge of society. And there are just incredible tools there which can help to bring theatre to a really engaged, wider audience.
Amazing. Thank you. Rosaline, I might ask you as well to just talk about your experience about using theatre to affect change as well.
Actually, Roisin, I'm really exhausted, and I just, my energy level is gone. So I'd rather just listen.
That's absolutely fine.
Emily and Lydia.
That is absolutely fine. No worries at all.
What I would say is, my work, this work, a lot of people think disability arts is a hobby or something. No, for me it's a profession. It's very uncomfortable, and it's very frightening being the only identifiable crip in the room. And I really, really feel, for me, the biggest block is access to other disabled writers, performers, directors. I mean, my work is not about change, it's about creativity or whatever. I try as I get older not to have the polemics, although they're there. But yeah, the other thing I would say as well, and then I shut up. Due to ableism, institutionalized ableism, the disability aesthetic in all its forms, in all its diverse forms, is not seen as of any cultural value, any entertainment value, any economic value. And that people will ask me, oh, they commission me, and they might say, have you any idea what you're going to do? And I say, no, not really. And then they say stuff like, it's an awful pity we don't have disabled actors. So the code word is, don't try and play about disability. That's the message, because we won't be able to put it on. I also there's a real discomfort and really, huge internal conflict that holds non-disabled lens controlling my work, evaluating my work, directing my work, commissioning my work, confining my work. Roisin, I'm not sure if that's added.
Oh, it absolutely has.
But and also a man doesn't get asked what age he is by way of his career. I get asked all the fucking time. I get asked what my impairment is. It's obvious. I get told, you're not really a traveler. You're not really this, you're not really. And they don't do all that stuff to my non-disabled peers. And also arts organizations, we had Waking the Feminists, and we had other stuff. But if I complain about ableism or racism, I won't get work again. Because there aren't enough of us that have power and influence. And they go on about venues and lack of venues, but they don't include accessible. And the current theatre festival has there been any disabled artists commissioned? I don't believe so. And then these are all publicly funded arts programs. I would also say that the organizations that are there for arts, disabled arts, need to be more vocal about, and they certainly don't. But my career, they haven't done much in terms of disabled women artists. And I'm not the only one who says that. And I need to be really careful. But I think we need to name it. We need to name it. And whatever consequence comes. But where are they? Other than captioning. and doling out grants. I think under no insurance routine, I would be very cynical. I would be very scared. I would be very aware that they would much rather deal with disabled men. They're easier to work with. They write plays about their penises. They have periods. You know, disabled men are more marketable. You know, the audience loves a wounded soldier other than an impaired woman. So there's all that stuff in the random as well. You know, the gender and sexism really plays out. It has played out in my circumstances, and I'd worry about younger disabled women and deaf women. You know, I wonder, are we safe? You know, can we advocate for ourselves and alter the relationship and the idea of collaboration is very exploitative. Who's collaborating? Who initiates? Who gets more out of it? Who gets paid? It's not always the artist with the impairment. And I'm not the only one that this, but I think sometimes people think, oh, and you know, it's collaboration. I'd be very, very dubious about that whole arrangement. And my last thing is, after COVID, and we have access to Zoom, which is all very well, but there is a little bit about theatres and other venues using that as a block so that they don't have to employ us, they don't have to work with us, they don't have to look at us, they don't have to employ signers or access workers, and we don't have to be in their venues, and they don't have to sit beside us. So there's a double edge. You know, people think, oh, Zoom, we've solved the access issue, and you can stream it or whatever. And I would be saying, actually, I want to be there. I don't want my hairdresser or any other service coming to my house. I want to go out and participate and be an active citizen in the arts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Bye.
And thank you for your reply, even though you're wrecked. Oh I don't know what I want to ask a question on. I covered so many topics. Maybe I'll go to you both, maybe Lydia and Emily. Just on your last point there, Rosaline, about how digitization has affected accessibility. I know that there has been lots of people on Twitter anyway, who I've seen that COVID-19 actually resulted in the arts opening up to them as a sphere that they were never able to be included in before, and that there were these positives. But then also, as you've just brought up, that it's maybe that's not a substitute for being there in real life. And maybe Lydia, if you'd like to start, maybe what has your experience been over the last year and a half of maybe accessing the arts as either a performer or an audience member, or yeah, and then I'll go to you, Emily, afterwards, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think over the last year, something I've noticed is definitely people have more patience when they're trying to see films, and people actually find there's more time to sit down, there's more time to have a conversation. And then I think there's there's more opportunities as well for that. I don't think that's really a big change that's happened because of COVID, but it has been a big step towards change, which I think is important. And I do see a lot more people who want to definitely book interpreters for events. And hopefully I'll see more people won't be arguing about booking interpreters for events. That would be nice. But it is great to see. And I love that because I have the accessibility, but I don't have to explain to people either, the difference between terms like disabled or like handicapped or impaired. Like I was in the European Parliament last week and I was called impaired so many times, and I was sitting there absolutely fuming because they were asking me to nearly prove my handicap, and it was like, come on, like seriously, like it was a big step forward. We think we have the knowledge there that they think they're nearly so far ahead of what they actually are. But I definitely think there just needs to be a lot more education about it, and like self-taught education. People need to think about themselves and their bias and what they need to do to make changes. Really, I'm grateful for the opportunity coronavirus has given us, but at the same time, I am absolutely exhausted from having to educate people, on the different terminologies. I'm not just deaf, disabled. Teaching people when you're going into a room that the first thing people notice is that I'm Black, is not that I'm deaf, or is that the first hurdle that I have to face that barrier and then the deaf barrier after that, So for many people, I remember, like I've had friends, and I'm friends with people who I've had friends with for 10 years. They said never like say you're deaf. They used to always hide your deafness. So it's only when I wrote an article about me, all my friends FaceTime me saying, "You're deaf, really? Like I never knew." And I was like, "Yeah, I am," but they said, "Oh, but you're so smart, but you speak so well. Like you don't look deaf." And I'm like, Jesus, what do deaf people look like? What do you think? Like, do they look broken? Like, I'm not broken. There's nothing, like, I didn't understand that. But so yes, of course, it's been great to have more opportunity, great to have more creativity and more access. But there definitely is a lot more education still needed. Like we have absolutely exhausted ourselves trying to advocate for ourselves. And it's been an emotional journey and it's been emotional work. So yeah, I'm trying to manage, but other people, I'm glad that other people now want to be involved in the process.
Great, thank you so much. And maybe on to you, Emily, about your experience of the digital arts sphere during COVID as a performer.
Well, I'll kind of speak to two things, if that's okay, Roisin, because Rosaleen raised so many points that I feel strongly about equally, and that I'd like to just expand on. So first of all, the digital thing, yeah, it's great, it's finite, and I think again, as Rosaleen said, that doesn't mean that we don't want to go out to the spaces as artists and as audience. And to me, the sort of the solution now for accessibility, sure, it can all be online. That's another ableist solution. That's another sort of, we're not really engaging. Oh, that seems to have evolved. Sure, that's grand for them. So what this all points to is again what Rosaleen was saying is the lack of, we don't have enough people in any of the sectors, like not just arts, but I suppose that's what we know about here today. And to me, I'm tired of hearing about inclusion. I want integration. Inclusion is not enough. Inclusion is where they bring you on a coach and then they bring you home again and say, wasn't that nice for you? So that's just not good enough. And I think, in sort of the work that I started doing, well, it was August last year when I sort of wrote my first letter to, at the time it was Hazel Chu, about all of this, is the barriers as I see them are hugely. There are the physical ones, absolutely, but I think the financial is massive. I think it starts in childhood. If you are even a middle income family, if you have a disabled child, you are so full-time fighting for services and then probably having to pay for them privately, that how will you have money or energy to bring your child to, develop their artistic talents or allow them engage, facilitate their engagement in the arts? You can't. And I think all of us here can probably say we struggled against massive odds to develop ourselves as artists. So that's the first thing. And then, as we know, the structure of the payment supports is that, you know, if you get a scholarship, you lose your supports. If you get there we saw recently with Catherine's law that it was overturned, that she could do it, so she could do her PhD. People who are blind and visually impaired on the blind pension don't have that privilege. It wasn't extended. There's also discrimination there in that, because it allows people to grow in their academic life, but not in their artistic life. So if you get an Arts Council grant from any, from any source, you will lose your supports. So then, then you're left in the position of trying to, first of all, pay for your disability to level the playing field with our non-disabled peers. And then you're left trying to, which is, I think for all of us here, we can't do the sort of jobs that we see our peers doing, our non-disabled peers. They're just not options. So you're left, so it's, and that's so we don't have the choice. We're struggling to develop. Then even equally within the arts, a lot of the work, if you manage to somehow develop, is short-term contract, poorly paid. So that means we're not going to have disabled stage managers, because how can they afford it? Because you lose a payment for a short thing. How are you going to have somebody on the ticket desk? How are you going to have somebody in lighting? All of these things, because of the structure of payments and because it costs the loss of supports, I don't see, until that structure changes, how we will get a critical mass of disabled artists and arts workers into the sector enough to change it. If we had enough people there, then there wouldn't, that would create change, and you wouldn't have these facile conclusions that, oh, Zoom will do them. That wouldn't happen, because you'd have people in the sector. So I suppose that's a huge thing that DADA, the Disabled Artists, Disabled Academics, that I guess we're trying to tackle, is the structure of those payments, as well as obviously physical barriers, like where you can't literally get into a place where there's no toilet or whatever it is, which is just ridiculous at this day. It's abhorrent. So I suppose that's what we're trying to do, and I guess that was the great thing with the Oireachtas the other last week, to have, and Isolde was with me. We presented, and I think we did bring a lot of information. So hoping to build on it, open to new members. The more voices, the better. And I suppose the nice thing about DADA is that people can be part of it, but you don't. This is another thing I feel strongly about. Like, why do disabled people have to give up their private lives and tell their stories in order to get basic human rights? I disagree with that.
That was my next question.
Yeah, so it's like people can be parts of DADA, and we can have your stories and send them in anonymously and all that kind of thing, because that's just that's kind of, I don't know, it's tabloid, isn't it? It's wrong. So yeah, maybe I'll stop now and give other people a chance, but there we are. Okay.
But if I can just add to that as part of the double act here, one of the things that has really struck me over the course of the DADA campaign is the level of fear. And Rosaline spoke to this and said, we have to actually name it, we have to call it out, but it is terrifying. And it's terrifying because, you risk being audited by social welfare, and this constant sort of internalized ableist cognitive dissonance, where you're having to prove on the one side that you are disabled enough to be supported, and on the other side that you are capable enough to do your work and do it at a high level and be taken seriously. I'm certain that even though my local arts office has supported me much more recently, in the past, I think my work was seen as a charity case. It was seen as a hobbyist and not seen as, real artwork. And yet we're bound by this thing that we do need a critical mass of disabled artists to change this narrative. But the barriers, the societal structural barriers, and the culture of fear around supports, losing them, losing money, being seen as difficult, all of those things have prevented each of us from joining together to make that change, and even just to be present and, you know, make the problem, you know, the access problem, a reality for arts organizations and venues.
Absolutely. And also maybe maybe some of the problem is also how like disability has been kind of sold to us as this internal, like individual issue. It's that it's not, there's no community there for you to even get into, and it's not something that you should identify with or seek out in other people, or even like, and that's something that I struggled with myself, is not wanting to have any disabled friends, because I didn't want to, like, I didn't want to be disabled. But that took some unlearning. But yeah, that we've covered so much ground already. Can I just check how we are for time? Because I'm like, I want to ask 5 million questions, but I don't want to annoy anyone by going over time.
You have another 5 minutes, Roisin.
Brilliant.
You know, 5 or 7 minutes, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Lydia, I have to go. But can I ask Lydia, as a traveler woman, the racism I've experienced, you would believe it, well, maybe you would believe it, but I wondered, would you talk a little bit about have you experienced racism in the way that I have?
Yeah, kind of my experience is a little bit different, I think, because like, of course, I grew up in the deaf community, so all my friends were white. And then in the Black community, they were all hearing. So I spent my time with white deaf community, so nearly hiding my Blackness. And then when I was in the Black community, I was hiding my deafness. So I found that I was a barrier in ableism in one community and in both. So I found that there was nearly, I did that until I was age 25 years old, like hiding on both sides. So I can't understand really nearly debility, but I can understand the needing access, you know, because I do regret for years that, like, even in university, for my first year, they did ask me if I wanted an interpreter, and I said no. Because I didn't want people in the class to know that I was deaf. And they were like, oh, come on, just try. And I was like, okay, you know, I'll give an interpreter a shot. And they gave me an interpreter. And I remember sitting at the very back of the class. I think there was 40 people in front of me, and I had my glasses on, and I was squinting at the interpreter because I didn't want anybody to know it was me. And then after 1 or 2 months, I was like, you know, I need the interpreter. I need access. And I was like, I went to a deaf school, you know, so primary school as well, so secondary school. And I still didn't fully understand that my disability meant I needed that access. So I find that now, if I'm talking about racism, I always say that, you know, I don't have the privilege of being deaf first, because for me, if people find out that I'm deaf, they're more like, I experience more racism as being Black than I am as being deaf. So because they see me as a Black woman, but when they find out then I have the disability, okay, you know, they get, people are nearly more willing to let you in the door that way. They have more empathy with me when they find out that I'm disabled. So that's really like, they give me a little bit more time. They'd be willing to listen to me then. So I think that my disability is part of me, but it's also, so is my Blackness. So, yeah. So it's strange. It's strange because, you know, I'm still trying myself to merge my identities, but the world just isn't the right fit for that nearly for the moment.
What's the thing about intersectionality? My traveler ethnicity, people would say, how do you prioritize? I don't prioritize, but I do believe in some context My gender is first. My ethnicity, my traveler ethnicity is second. And my impairment is third. But I really do feel when we use the word intersectional, even academics, they'll have a list: gender, race, ethnicity, orientation, whatever, but they rarely introduce disability or impairment or deafness as part of that intersection. Anyway, I'm going to go, Roisin. I have another meeting.
Right.
Yeah, Emily, keep going. And mind
Thank you, Rosaline.
and thank you to
An
the
inspiration.
women. Bye bye.
Thanks, Rosaline.
Amazing. Okay, so we have 3 minutes left. So I'll just go around the panel and maybe end on maybe like an inspiring little question. And it's also a selfish question because I'm looking for more more role models and people to look up after this. But maybe I'll start with you, Izalda, and I'll go to you, Emily, and then end with Lydia, about either a person, it could be an organization, it doesn't necessarily have to be anything to do with disabled women, but yeah, like an organization or a person that inspires you to either create more art or continue on with activism. And then I think we'll wrap it up after that. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Roisin. It's always hard to choose one, but I'm going to, I suppose, first I will mention Dada and working with Emily on the activist side of things. We have yet to actually creatively work together, but that will change. But I'm also going to shamelessly plug Full Spectrum Ireland. Again, part of the whole world going on to Zoom has meant that disability activism in Ireland has had a massive shot in the arm, to use a very relevant metaphor. And one outcome of that has been founding an all-island group of disabled LGBTI plus people to really give ourselves a shared space, recognize our shared experiences, support one another, and ensure that our voices are heard at various tables. And one area of that we are developing is around sexuality and sex positivity for disabled and LGBT people, because it is still taboo. It is still radical to imagine that a disabled person could be desirable or could have desire. And as well as the conversations around consent, we need conversations around agency. And that sort of finding that there are other people like me who care about these things, who want to change things, that keeps me going.
Yeah.
And that, constantly reinvigorates me, refills my spoon drawer.
I feel that. Thank you so much. Emily?
Thank you, Roisin. I guess I want to say there's something a bit tricky about that, because I guess I kind of feel like we're in a sort of unique moment. And I think that inner conflict that Lydia you spoke of, and Rosaline as well, where on the one hand you're being, quite forward and talking about things, but then there's another part of you that is vulnerable because you do have a disability, and you're just vulnerable because you're a private person. So and then so there's a lot of, I think, conflict that you kind of occupy this space that's hard to bring sometimes the two sides together. And I think for me, certainly in the last few months, I'm trying to become okay with sort of that, in a way, what can seem like, I'm a person who loves harmony. So that kind of, in a way, it seems dissonant, trying to find a peace in that. And actually, I suppose that's what music does for me, singing. That's when I was saying about the short piece there about resilience. It's in the singing. It just sing through it, breathe through it, In terms of inspiration, so yeah, to say about that I think we are in a unique moment in time, with the UNCRPD, with the fact that most of us in Ireland 40 years ago will probably be in an institution. We wouldn't be heard, we wouldn't be seen, we wouldn't be out and about at all. So I think we have to kind of connect together, as we're actually really are breaking ground, and even with the Oireachtas last week, that they hadn't kind of heard some of the stuff that we told them, was like, oh my God, this is actually, so I think it's kind of having really courage going into the unknown. And I suppose what helps me then as well is jazz, because jazz as a music, I feel like it's a music that's based on values. It was about a community, finding their voice, and among so much oppression. So I think that, it's a music with values, that values its parents, its founders, that values where it's going and really upholds that through the music. So that does Toni Morrison, very much so. And also because I think what we're trying to do in this is sort of find an eloquence as well. Because ultimately you want to, it's got to be positive and creative, and it got to bring people along. So I mean, I think Toni Morris is just so beautifully eloquent. So that kind of things inspires me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Lydia.
Really, so I know I'm supposed to be humble when I'm answering this question about role models and people who inspire you, but I'm going to go a bit the other way with this and say, honestly, myself. Because I've seen a huge transformation in myself over the last year. I've seen my work and my campaigning, my activism, my community here in Ireland and all over Europe. And really, I feel like it's for the first time ever, I'm building myself up. And also I've established the first ever deaf group for bipolar deaf people for all over Europe. And last week we met for the first time, and that was in Budapest, and it was 40 children, 40 European countries coming together to this event, and that had never happened before. And always I'd said, be the person you want children to be inspired by. And I'm exactly the person I need to be inspired by children, So all my life I've been wanting to go through this, and I've wanted to be happier, and I've wanted so much more confidence. And if I meet a person like me years ago, I would have had that. So I'm the person who inspires me.
That's such a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for saying that as well. That's I'm a bit emotional actually. I feel like this panel was amazing. I got so much out of it, and I really hope that everyone on the panel and in the audience did too. And yeah.
Can I just ask one question before the panel ends, if you don't mind? Sorry about my voice. I have a bit of a cold. Mary T here. For those who can't see me, I've got a lovely eye patch on today. I've got red hair. Some of you may know me. I've really enjoyed it today, although I haven't been able to fully participate. And I want to congratulate the group from Dada for raising their voices last week. And I don't believe for a minute that they didn't know about the issues. But you need to start banging on that drum and make sure that they don't forget about them. But I also want to say that, the artists do inspire us. We are watching as audience members. While I like to dance, I'm not an artist, but I am a big supporter of those in the arts. And I do think that it's important that we give an opportunity and spaces to young people as well, who are interested in the arts who may have a disability, not just as addressing disability within the arts, but art for its sake and for self-expression. And if you cannot see it, you cannot be it. So, and I wish that I'd had this opportunity when I was younger. I went to a special school, and while you were channeled in certain directions to be academically bright, you weren't really encouraged to be, money wasn't spent in that direction. And Emily's quite right that some families don't have that opportunity. They're struggling with the everyday things. But the UNRCPD should give us that vehicle to constantly pursue that as a right for people to express themselves and to make a living. Yeah, sorry. That's
Absolutely.
it.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments. Catherine, how are we doing for time?
I think we have to, bring Blessing back in to probably bring things to a close, because we are gone over 5.
All right.
Thanks, Roisin.
No worries. Thank you.
Sorry, my microphone wouldn't turn on. Wow, that was yeah, just thank you so much for the panel discussion, just the fantastic discussions and the contributions. And I was getting a bit emotional there as well, like proper Scarlet. You know, I keep forgetting that I'm a host, you know, and like, whew, I just need to calm down. But just a huge thanks to the speakers today for sharing your thoughts and ideas with us. And, you know, just as with everyone in the audience, I'm sure I'm speaking for all of us when I say that you've given us some very thoughtful performances. See you at at the Academy next week, and insights for us to take away and the action we need to call to ensure participation and a career in the arts that can be accessible and sustainable for all disabled women, and to continue the struggle for a just and equal society for everyone. I would now like to close the event and thank everyone for their participation. Thank you so much to all our panelists and to our panel chair, Roisin, to our performers, to the ISL interpreters, to our technical support, and to the staff of NWC. And a special thanks to Gladys O'Neill, Grania Blair, Selena Bonney, and Aoife Price for working to bring this event to life. And the message that I just want to leave with everyone in the audience is just to go where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated. And just thank you so much for everyone that's took part in this event. You've definitely left a mark on me, and I'm sure the others can say the same. And yeah, take care, and we look forward to coming together again to mark International Day of Disabled Persons on the 2nd of December. So take care in the meantime, and thank you so much for being here.